Welcome again, everyone. This is Philip Amerson with the To Be and Do podcast, where we look at how interrelationships are pretty important and interdependence may be more important than independence. And today I am thrilled to have Dr. Gloria Howell with us. Now, there are very few people I think of when I think of community leaders that pop up immediately. There are three or four in Bloomington, and one that's always on that list is Dr. Gloria Howell. Gloria is the head of the Neal-Marshall Black Culture Center at Indiana University. But you do so many other things, Gloria. I don't. Where do you find the time?
I ask myself that every day, and there are folks who have asked me, "Do you have an extra 24 hours in your day that people just don't know about?" And I really don't know. I'm just grateful that I have the energy to do the things that I do, but at the same time, the things that I do give me the energy that I have. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's great. That's great. I when we talked a few weeks ago, I found out that you were from down near Holly Springs, Mississippi.
Yes, yes, and that always makes me happy when I think about home. I'm from New Albany, Mississippi, which is about 30 minutes from Holly Springs. So when I travel home, I drive through Memphis, then I drive through Holly Springs, and I get to New Albany. And my uncle actually coached basketball at Russ College, which is a historically black college in Holly Springs, Mississippi. So I grew up going to Russ College all the time.
Oh, wow. Well, it's related to United Methodism, as you and I both know,
Yes,
and
sir.
one of the historic black colleges. Uh, but what I love is we found out that you were from New Albany, and so was I. But mine was New Albany, Indiana.
Yes. I always have to clarify when I talk to people. They're like, New Albany, Indiana. I'm like, well, the other New Albany.
So tell me about the journey from Mississippi to Indiana.
Well, I really initially thought I was gonna be in the South all of my life. And I just love it there. I was born and raised in Mississippi by a village of black women. My mom, my grandmother, and all of my mom's sisters, who are very near and dear to me. And everything I do is for them. And when I was in Mississippi growing up, I didn't grow up. I would say in retrospect, I probably grew up poor, but didn't realize that I was poor. Um,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there was just a way that there's always a way that when you grow up in a good home and you feel so much love that we I never went without, and there were times where I know my mom had to sacrifice a lot. But even so, she made sure that I had the best of everything. I grew up in a very small town. Um, where it was predominantly white, but my community, there were things that wouldn't let me forget my blackness. Like I
Right.
grew up in a black church, and the black church raised me. I was in church 3 or 4 times a week, which I look back at that and I'm like, how in the world did I make it? But I was in. We lived in Mississippi's considered the Bible Belt, and that may be for better or for worse. But at any rate, I grew up in a church where I felt love. And the church that I grew up in, it started out as a school, like a lot of black churches in the
Right.
South. So they had, multiple purposes. Um, but I grew up in church. My high school experience, I went to a very small, poor school. And so I knew that I could go to college, but I just didn't. The trajectory was from my school. You graduated and you went to school at Ole Miss or Mississippi State, and you came back home. And most of my friends became teachers in the schools that we
Right.
went to. And I knew that I didn't want to be a teacher in the school that although I loved my school, um, So I was always looking toward, how can I didn't want to be too far from my mom, but and my
Right.
grandmother, but I decided that, I got a full ride scholarship, the Lucky Day scholarship, and I went to the University of Mississippi and studied broadcast journalism when I graduated. And that is kind of my intro into like this love for storytelling. In high school, I actually wanted to be the next Oprah. Like if someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and Phil, I had some of my friends, they started calling me Glopra, and because I was always trying to like talk to people, and I was like, what in the world? Like, how did that even happen? And it stuck because, I have people now that call me Glopra. And I just knew, and of course, Oprah Winfrey is from Mississippi. And, so she was somebody that I watched growing up, and I wanted to be a talk show host. And then something happened, and I don't know, I changed my mind, and I said I wanted to be a political news correspondent, or I wanted to work for the White House. Now, this was, around the time that Obama was the president. So like,
Right.
2000 going into 2008. And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be a White House news correspondent." I did an internship at a news station, a small station, and I did not like it at all. I did not like I did not like the technical aspects. I just wanted to have somebody do my makeup and tell the news. Now I was an I was an intern, so of course that wasn't going to happen. But how a lot of students will say they go on an internship and they're doing things like making coffee and running copies. And I was actually working because the station was so small. So I was producing packages that were ending
Well,
up on the evening news. But I'm like, I didn't sign up to be a one man band and jug this camera around and all of this stuff. So, but I love the writing aspect and I love the storytelling aspect. And so I made a decision, and like a lot of students, and I tell my story to students all the time, to where you have to just kind of pivot. And I got to senior year of at University of Mississippi, and I was like, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to be a news reporter anymore. And I had a mentor who I credit for, one of the people that I credit for getting me into student affairs. And she said, you're an over involved student. I was in student government. I was president of Black Student Union. One of the most important organizations that I just cherish my experience was the University of Mississippi Gospel Choir. And so that kind of birthed my love for the arts. And she said, you're involved in all these things. You're a student, but you're like a student adjacent because you're doing all these things. So why don't you go into higher ed, student affairs? And I said, oh, you can go to school for that? And she said, yeah, and so I got a master's degree in higher ed student personnel. I enjoyed working with students, and I started to like research because that was my introduction to conferences. And I thought, well, you've come this far, you might as well go to the doctorate since you're interested in research. And at that time, I thought I wanted to teach as well. And so then I came to Indiana University because I had a mentor who was a faculty member in the School of Education at Ole Miss. And she took me to breakfast one morning after church. We went to the same church. And I'll never forget, we were at IHOP. And I thought we were just going to eat. And she pulled one of the little coloring sheet menus from IHOP because I didn't have any paper. And I was like, what do I need paper for? So she gave me a pen and this menu, and she said, you're going to make a list of 20 schools. And I said, what? What are we doing? And she said, you need to figure out where you want to go. If you want to get this PhD, you need to figure out where you want to go. So I had a list of 20 schools. We narrowed it to 10 by location. We narrowed it to 5 by what I wanted to study. And one of those schools was Indiana University because
oh,
of the faculty members who was here at the time, Dr. Lori Patton Davis. And I also have family in Indianapolis that I wasn't incredibly close to, but I knew that I had people here.
right.
Um, and so I got into IU. It was the number 2 higher ed student affairs program at the time. And I got accepted, and here I am, and thought I was going to get my degree and go back south where there were four seasons. And yeah. So I, Phil, I'm telling you, I've been here since 2013. My first year was the polar vortex situation. I didn't even know what that was. I had to Google what a polar vortex was. And I'm like, how do people, my body is not built for this. So, but here we are. And,
So,
almost 12 years later, I'm still in Bloomington.
so besides the weather, what else has surprised you living in Indiana?
You know, it has surprised me how much people compare Bloomington in particular to like the deep south. And it almost offends me because I'm like, this is not the deep south. I almost feel like super offended because people are just like, oh, we're just so friendly and all of this stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe compared to like New York, but you know, that is definitely not compared to New Albany or the places that we're from, Holly Springs. Like definitely not compared to that. So, but people try to tell me like when I said, "Oh, I just missed the South," and they're like, "Oh, well, you're in Southern Indiana," and I'm like, "That's not the South." Like capital T, capital S. That's not the South. So,
I was I've just returned from a trip to Boulder, Colorado, and
yeah,
and was talking to someone who's at the university there. They had been at IU for 3 years, and the woman said, "People think Bloomington is so friendly, but we didn't get to know many people, and it felt so cold to us."
yes,
And
yes.
I shouldn't say this publicly because I don't want to degrade my town, but we got work to do in Bloomington to be a friendlier place.
You're right. You're right, Phil. And I say that because that aspect of life in any town determines the retention of folks and how long they stick around, and that I think is when you mention the things I do in the community, if there was one thing that's at the top of the list, I think that's what it is for me, which is not an official title or role that, somebody gave me. It's really a role that I gave myself. Which is to be a community curator, because there are folks who come into this town, and Bloomington can easily become a revolving door,
Yeah.
particularly for folks of color that move here, and that come from places that, um, that kind of are compositionally different. And so if people aren't welcomed as soon as they, get here, or I think about when my first experience in Bloomington was the second night that I was here, and my folks had gone back to Mississippi, and I was incredibly homesick. My first experience, had I not been like, resilient and persistent about getting my degree and like why I was here, I probably would have packed my bags and went back to Mississippi because I had a terrible, terrible experience at Walmart, you know,
Wow.
and I back home, we didn't have a Kroger. My town was, it was real small.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everybody went to Walmart or you went to like Piggly Wiggly or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I went to Walmart in Bloomington, getting some things. And, my it, some things just kind of naturally come from you. And I naturally say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir. That's just how I was raised, And the person that was checking me out at Walmart, I said yes, ma'am, to her when she asked me, did I find everything okay? And she literally stopped ringing my things up in line. And there were people behind me. She stopped and she looked me straight in my face. Like she leaned over the little counter and she said, "Don't you ever say that to me." And it wasn't like a joking type of way. It was a very like, I mean, I still see the look on her face. And I
Wow.
said, "Well," I just politely said, "Pardon me for offending you. I was just taught to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, yes, sir, and no, sir. I didn't mean anything by it." And
Right.
I said, "That's just how." I said, "I'm from the South." I'm trying to like kind of eat, kind of mull it over a little bit. I said, "I'm from the South. That's just kind of what I grew up doing." And her next thing that she said to me was, "Well, you're not in the South." And I just kind of said, and she didn't say anything else to me during that encounter. I paid for my stuff. I said thank you, and I was embarrassed because there's people behind me that the line has been like held up, and I got to the door and I was like, why did she do that? And thankfully, there was a gentleman, and I think, and because I'm a believer, and I think things are kind of serendipitous, and things happen for a reason. I'm walking out of the store, and I was just like, is this how people are gonna be, during my time here? There was a gentleman who was a member of City Church. He was a white male, and he was like two people behind me in line, and he had gotten, like, I don't even think he had bags in his hand. He might have just left his items because there's no way he could have finished up and got to me
Right.
because I was trying to get out the store. And he ran behind me, and he was like, miss. And I turned around, and he said, I saw what happened at the counter, and I'm so sorry that that woman responded to you. I think she is dealing with some other things. And he said, he gave me his card, and he said, I would love for you to visit my church, which was City Church. And, he said, may I ask, where you're from in the South? And we just had a nice little conversation. I told him I had been in Bloomington for 2 days. And, I said, I'm here for school. And he was so kind. And he is the reason why I visited City Church. And,
Wow.
so there's always something that can, for every negative action, I think around the corner there's going to be something to counter it, and that gentleman was definitely an angel to me that day. So
Well,
yeah.
thank you, Dr. Gloria Howell. You are giving us a great story about belonging and about connecting and weaving new links. Elaine and I make it a point to take young faculty, especially persons of color, to dinner 2 or 3 times a year. And you and I, let's make a covenant that we're going to help Bloomington be a place that's more welcoming. And like the gentleman from City Church, we need to do it in the name of Jesus.
Yes, I 100% agree, and I'm in agreement with you right now on this day, April 9th at 10:13 a.m. I am in agreement with you. I can do that.
Let's do it. Thank you, Dr. Gloria Howell, for your sharing on the belonging exchange. And we're making a covenant together here to better sow seeds of Christ's care and love and mutuality in our town. Thank you so much. And Gloria will be with us, or should I say, what was it? Glow opera? Glopra? Gropra will be with us for another segment. Thank you, Dr. Howell.
Thank you, Phil. So this is one of my favorite artifacts, and it is a picture of me and my mom. Her name is Shirley Howell, and this picture sits on my desk, right next to my computer, so that I see her every day. And anybody that knows me, I talk about my mom quite a bit. She is legitimately my best friend, and not my best friend in a way that's like, "Hey girl," but a best friend that she means business, best friend. And she's my biggest cheerleader. She holds me accountable, and I always talk about when someone asks me about my upbringing, and what kind of fuels me today and how I make those connections. My mom is definitely the link. She is phenomenal. She raised me as a single mom. She taught me values. She taught me how to never take any mess from anybody. She taught me how to speak my mind, how to be bold, how to stand up for things that are right. And I just really appreciate everything that I've learned from her. We talk literally every day. And in fact, if she doesn't hear from me by the end of a day, the next morning I'll have a text that says, "Good morning, are you okay?" And I know that that just means that I didn't talk to her the night before because maybe I had too much going on, and like I didn't pick up the phone, or maybe we texted. But we typically talk on the phone every day because my day is just it just goes much better when I hear from her. And she just retired, so now I just call her in the middle of the day because she retired at the end of February. So I just be calling her at the end of the day. She'll probably get tired of me soon, but I love her dearly, and so she is always literally next to me in my office. So that's my mom.